Hi, I'm Warren Sprouse. You're watching the Bible Forum. We're here every Sunday night from 8 to 10 p.m. right here on the BibleForum.net, and we'd invite you to be a part of that. We're talking tonight about Christian counseling, and there's a story in Kentucky about an ordained Christian minister by the name of David Wells who has provided voluntary spiritual counseling and mentorship to juvenile inmates under the control of the Kentucky Department of Juvenile Justice for years. He's now being charged with sexual harassment. What did he do? You know what he did. He told a young inmate, in response to that inmate's question, that homosexuality was a sin. Not an alternative lifestyle, but just what the Bible calls it. In a written response to Liberty Counsel, the Kentucky Department of Juvenile Justice said, quote, that it seeks to protect the rights of all youth in its care and custody, regardless of sexual orientation or committing offense. To this end, the department prohibits its staff and volunteers from discriminating against youth based on sexual orientation or gender identity. They did not specify this particular counselor, minister. They just said, this is our policy. The state has now imposed a requirement that all volunteers, quote, shall not imply or tell LGBTQI, I wonder how long this thing is going to get, juveniles that they are abnormal, deviant, sinful, or that they can or should change their sexual orientation or gender identity. Now, it needs to be noted here that apparently, in response by the Liberty Counsel, the implication is they never told this pastor that. They had the policy, or they made the policy, but they didn't tell him about it. They just held him accountable for something that they did. Volunteers are required to sign the statement. He apparently didn't get that statement. He made equivalent, he's now being charged or being labeled as being some sex offender because it's now equivalent to sexual harassment or discrimination. He says anybody who disagrees with homosexual advocacy is now being called a bigot. Pastor Wells must be able to discuss what the Bible says about matters of sexuality with the juveniles he's trying to help. If you remove the Bible from the pastor's hand, you have removed the scalpel from the surgeon's hand. And without it, he has no tools. He cannot provide the healing. Is that what they want? I think the answer is yes. Here's a young fellow who's in jail, no telling why. What was his question? What was the genesis of it? What was the background? Why? We don't know. But you're sitting there talking to somebody and they ask you the question. What are you going to say? In this case, the pastor would be required to say, son, I can't answer that question for you. Have you got another one? And it won't be long before that's all you're going to be able to say to somebody. This guy's probably out of that ministry, and so am I. So is anybody who can't live according to that standard. Early in the show, we talked about the religion in America that is the most intolerant, and it's liberalism. And here's an illustration of it. Pastor David Wells, innocently going about his business, told somebody that doing this god-awful behavior to somebody else, a behavior that is physically destructive to the human body, a behavior that is clearly not natural, a behavior that brings with it all sorts of disease, that this thing is okay. And the Bible's definition of sin and or sex is destructive. That's the America we live in today.